Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today I want to talk to you about what's going on in the community of EA shooters. That means Battlefront, Battlefield Hardline, and Battlefield 4. Now, although we don't really have a lot of new information on Battlefront, that information is going to start coming in very soon. In fact, it's going to come in on the 17th when DICE releases a new trailer for Battlefront showing some of the first gameplay. Now, my expectations for Battlefront are extremely high. It's kind of a developer meets franchise match made in heaven, if you will. DICE making a giant Star Wars battle game is going to be awesome. They've already got their experience with Battlefield. They've allocated all their top resources in Stockholm to making this game awesome. That is pretty much the top talent that made Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And since this game is going to be next-gen consoles and PC only, you can only imagine what the graphic fidelity of this game is going to be when it's not being held back by old-gen hardware. So matching that with DICE's art team is just going to be unreal. The Star Wars universe looks awesome enough as it is. Combine that with DICE's art team and I think we're just going to have a gorgeous looking game. So anyway, keep your eyes out for that new Battlefront trailer. I cannot wait, and I'm going to be eating up any little bit of information we can get about this game. Now let's talk a little bit about Battlefield Hardline. I think the launch of the game has been pretty darn solid overall. There's been minimal bugs compared to, I would say, Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4's launch. So overall, it's been a nice, solid launch. Something that's kind of gone under the radar, I think, by most people is the fact that the price of the game was actually dropped down to $40 on Amazon. Probably a lot of other retailers as well. If you want a link to that, I'll put one in the video description. But basically, people were complaining about it being a little bit overpriced for what you're getting with the game, at least what you're used to getting with the Battlefield game. So it seems like EA has dropped the price in accordance with people's demand. So if you haven't bought the game yet, it is now $40, so it might be a little more enticing. In addition to that, we have patch number 1 in the works, and that should be coming out very soon. They're going to be balancing a lot of the troubled weapons, particularly the K10 that's getting a damage reduction in both its max damage and its minimum damage. This should hopefully balance it out much better with the other PDWs in the game and perhaps reduce some of that K10 rage, because it is without question one of the best guns in the game, and it's just easy mode. You don't even need a lot of skill to do really well with it. In addition to that, we're seeing the HCAR and the HK51 battle rifles having their recoil reduced to bring them more in line with the SCAR H and the SA58. We're also seeing the battle rifles minimum damage increased to 25 across the board, which means they're going to be able to 4-shot kill anybody at long range with those weapons. I think this is really going to improve their long range effectiveness. We're also seeing a damage increase on the FMG9 PDW for the mechanic. This is a very hard gun to unlock because it's one of the Syndicate assignment weapons, and this will hopefully make it a more worthwhile unlock to get, since right now it's not too effective. The AKM is getting a minimum damage reduction from 25 down to 24, so you won't be able to 4-shot kill people at longer ranges. I would have to say, please don't. This seems like a bad idea overall. The AKM, although I consider it to be quite a good weapon, is still underpowered when compared to the other assault rifles. So if you're going to nerf the AKM, you gotta nerf the other 2 assault rifles, or just don't nerf the AKM. Personally, I'm not actually opposed to nerfing the other 2 assault rifles, so Visceral, if you want to take a crack at that, I've already made some suggestions on how to mess with their damage model. Another issue that will hopefully be fixed in the next patch is the TDM spawning. TDM friend zones have been adjusted for better spawning according to Visceral, so we'll have to see how this actually plays out, but currently TDM is a pretty bad situation right now. It's a lot of chaotic spawning, getting shot in the back. I personally would prefer the setup where, you know, one team takes one side of the map, the other team takes the other side of the map, and the spawn zones kind of shift around the map facing each other rather than just being kind of chaotic and all over the place. They're also tweaking the RPG reduced to 1 ammo count from the back of cars, and they're also giving it a smaller explosion radius overall, thus you're going to be required to actually hit the car directly or hit other things much closer to deal damage to them. I think this is a great update. Hopefully it'll fix the issue of Hotwire being essentially CarPG, which is what I've nicknamed it, because that's all you do. You get in a car, you get the RPG out of the trunk, and then you drive around in cars shooting RPGs at each other. Now, it might sound awesome right off the bat, but as soon as you start trying to take the game mode seriously, it just gets frustrating, because that's all that happens. You're either shooting people with RPGs or getting shot by an RPG. I would hope that Visceral would actually take this one step further, make it so that if you get the reinforced chassis upgrade for your car, that you can actually actually tank an RPG shot. This way you can decide, do I want an RPG or do I want to be able to survive an RPG shot in my car? That would be a much more interesting update. Now there's a bunch of other bug fixes and gameplay changes being added in the next patch. If you want to know more about that, I'll put a link in the video description so you can read them for yourself. Now how about Battlefield 4? This game is still alive and kicking. Hardline has not replaced it even in the slightest, and it's kind of interesting because Hardline has come out, but yet they're still promoting BF4 in many ways, and you might think that it actually could hurt Hardline's actual launch because in a sense EA is competing against itself. They've just launched another game that is now trying to steal the player base from one game over to the other game, and they're still working on both games at the same time. It never really made a lot of sense to me why they would do this, but on the bright side, of course, if you're not a fan of BF Hardline and you much prefer the military setting of Battlefield 4, you're still getting tons of content. They're working on night maps. We're probably not going to see those too soon. They have been taken out of the spring patch, so they're going to be delayed for a later date. I guess they have to do a lot of work in terms of balancing and making those fun to play, but they are still working on new maps for the games. They've got those 5 new weapons that I just showed off in a recent video, and those guns look really cool. Like I can't wait to play with them. So the content coming out for Battlefield 4 is extremely cool. I would say it definitely rivals the upcoming DLC for Hardline and stuff like that. So it's kind of weird again that they've got 2 Battlefield games competing against each other. I like them both. I really like the freshness of Hardline, and especially the shift from heavy armored vehicle combat over to light armored vehicle combat and infantry focused combat. That's something that has really grown on me with the recent Battlefield releases, is they've just improved the infantry combat so much that I really almost prefer it over the vehicle combat in game. I'm not saying I don't want vehicles, but I just like game modes that definitely offer you a lot of infantry combat potential. I also really like the fact that Hardline has adopted the Battlefield 3 damage model instead of the Battlefield 4 damage model, giving you a faster time to kill. Now, I have no problem with longer time to kill games. I just don't think Battlefield really is suited for that. There's so many players and so many enemies that you have to be able to deal with on a split-second notification. The fact that you have longer time to kill means that dealing with 3 enemies becomes much more difficult in Battlefield 4 compared to Battlefield Hardline. I'm consistently getting 3 kills per magazine in Hardline, which is something that I like. It allows me to deal with multiple targets, lots of chaotic gameplay. In Battlefield 4, you're just kind of screwed in a lot of those situations. I think higher time to kill makes much more sense in multiplayer games where you're facing off against small numbers of enemies, and you can be much more tactical about how you engage your opponents and deal with multiple threats. Battlefield, you really just don't have that option in so many situations. You could at any moment see your opponent spawn out 3 or 4 bad guys from behind them, and now you have to deal with those, and unfortunately you just can't in most situations. So anyway, we have a lot of new game stuff coming from DICE and Visceral in the near future. We've got 2 Battlefield games currently being worked on right now, so there's going to be plenty of Battlefield content coming out in the near future, regardless of whether or not you prefer Hardline or Battlefield 4. And if you're riding that Star Wars hype train as I am, then you're probably pretty excited about the new content that's coming out in the near future. Can't wait to see that trailer on the 17th. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.